see, Counselor Andrus,
Here.
Counselor Gwaltney, Counselor Wolverton,
Here.
Counselor Sims,
Here.
and Counselor Nelms.
Here.
So you have Mr. Gwaltney out, but you still have a quorum.
All right. I will begin with a motion to dismiss the reading and approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved.
Second. All right. Motion from Counselor Sims, second from Counselor Nelms. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Mr. Smith, did we lose our? Oh, we absolutely can. Are we okay on time? Okay.
I'll talk fast.
Okay, all right, hang on, I gotta introduce the item. Item is, we're gonna jump down to 060822, public hearing set for September 12th, 2022 at 6 p.m. for consideration to remove a zoning restriction PR2C planned residential district conditional from 1116 Hollywood Manor Drive. The applicant is Joseph A. Miller from MTTR Engineers, owner Rose Saris, in order to permit the construction of a single-family house. The Planning Commission heard this 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
we had a vote of 7-0, 2 were absent, for a favorable recommendation. Mr. Miller.
Yes, I'm Joey Miller, MTTR Engineers, 3 River Ridge. What we've got three cases here actually before Homewood. One's before the City Council. There are 2 lots, and we came and submitted a resurvey to resurvey those 2 lots into 1 lot. Well, it turns out that Lot 9 is the lower lot on Old Montgomery Highway, and it actually has a restricted covenant restricting it to only build 2 duplexes on the property, and that's all you can do on it. So, for us to be able to resurvey the lot into 1 big lot, we had to submit an amended development plan for proposed Lot A, which was heard by the Planning Commission, and the resurvey was heard by the Planning Commission 2 weeks ago. But we have to go before the City Council because y'all have to take the restricted covenant off so we can build a single-family house on that piece of property. So that's what we're here for.
And I will mention that we did pass all 3 from the Planning Commission, and there was a large contingent of neighbors at the meeting, and none spoke on the record, but all were in favor by acclamation. I asked everyone in favor, everybody raised their hand. So the neighbors were there to speak in favor.
I'm just curious, what's going on with the 2 to the 1?
Well, yes, here's,
So in 2008, it went from PR1 to PR2. Right when it went to PR2, they put conditions on those lower lots that they could only be town.
right now, it's 2 lots. So we're gonna make 1 lot so we can put a house on it. But the problem, we're here before you now is the lowest lot, the one on Old Montgomery Highway, has got the wrong zoning now. And it was because it was a restrictive covenants. It would have the right zoning if the covenant wasn't restricted, but
Okay.
that's.
Can you tell me again the company with the L something?
Oh, who I'm with? MTTR Engineers.
MTTR?
Yes, ma'am.
Property was rezoned in 2008 at the owner's request to permit duplex on that 1 lot. So essentially, this is a request essentially to make it all single family in 1 lot.
And we saw the plans for the home that they're going to build.
Plans aren't really relevant to this issue.
Right. Right. Well, we had to approve the amended development plan at the Planning Commission, but, so, any other questions? Okay.
Make a motion to send out without recommendation pending the public hearing.
Thank y'all.
Second?
Second.
Second. Okay, I have a motion from Counselor Sims, second from Counselor Nelms to send out without recommendation pending public hearing on September 12th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Andrew?
I said aye.
You did, okay. 4-0. Thank you. Okay. Alrighty, going back, let's see. 060622, public hearing held on August 8th at 6 p.m. We're going to leave this item to consider amending the city's zoning ordinances to include the food fence ordinance. We're going to leave this here in committee. Per the BZA, or pending with the BZA, any comments from them, from their meeting in September, is that right? September? Okay, new business 050822, request to consider revisions to the tree and landscape ordinance brought to us by Mr. Smith. You all should have received that from Mr. Smith today via email. Any questions? I did receive a question from the Homewood Environmental Council, and I did share with them what these requests were, and they didn't have any objections.
Okay.
So, any questions?
You mean any questions about the changes?
Yeah. Any questions?
So, you know, received these this afternoon, just trying to pull them back up. And so let's take the first, some of these I'm more familiar with, but adding a definition for artificial turf, can you kind of give us the context of
Yes.
the value of that?
So right now, accessory structures in the zoning ordinance are defined as a bunch of different things, but we interpret it to mean basically as anything that's non-organic. And so artificial turf has been a popular thing in the past 6 months, and we see a lot of it. So what we're having to do is every time an artificial turf backyard, somebody wants to put artificial turf in their backyard, we take them to the BZA because we consider it an accessory structure, and there's a 30% limit for backyard accessory structures. So this cleans all that up and eliminates a couple of BZA cases a month. We will review the section and the installation means and methods and all that of the turf section that somebody wants to put down. So we're making sure they're not putting down concrete and then some sort of turf right on top of that, right?
So basically then it becomes not porous.
Right, that's right. We're gonna, it's our intent to keep it, the hydrology the same as natural turf would be. And in some cases, artificial turf is better for
For example,
controlling
I
stormwater.
had a Ward 5 went to BZA last week, same thing, and he was building, it was even more permeable than,
Yeah.
it had been just regular house.
Okay.
So that,
But
so
it
we're,
was coming
so
in
we're,
because it was an accessory structure.
yeah, so we're adding a definition just so we don't have to consider it an accessory structure anymore.
So that sounds
That's
great.
number one.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Makes it less work on the back end, and it's kind of one of those things
Yeah.
where until you get into the implementation of the ordinance, you don't realize what unintended consequences are going to crop up. Speaking of which, Section F, exemptions. So that says building permits issued for maintenance or interior alterations and renovations where the work is less than 50% of the building area or site improvements less than $5,000 shall be exempt from the requirements of this article. So I think I've heard quite a bit from residents about that one where they were doing a smaller project, but they had to come in compliance with the ordinance. And this is to possibly address some of that.
Right. The first example was a business, somebody wanted to put a catering business in Linden or Crescent or somewhere. So they were leasing the space and they wanted to do a renovation inside. And then we said, no, you're getting a building permit, you have to come into compliance with the tree and landscape ordinance. And then the owner of the building said, wait, what? And they're having to, figure out where to plant trees and that kind of thing. So, this will help that. This eliminates them having to come into compliance.
So does a case that I was involved in also get covered under that, where there was a big renovation inside, and it was probably a $30,000 or $40,000 renovation, and they were renting the space, but there's concrete all around. There was not even, it was all parking in front of the building and beside and behind the building. There wasn't 1 inch of dirt, yet there was a landscape plan required.
Mm-hmm.
Is that included anywhere so that the trigger might not happen?
So, I mean, it's in the definition. If a building permit is issued for something like you suggested, where the work is less than 50% of the building area,
Less than 50% of the building area.
is calculated by the total square footage of all the floors. So if you're less than 50%, then you're exempt from this.
Okay.
But if you're more,
The dollar amount is higher, and I mean, I'm just curious about.
there's the only dollar amounts for site improvements,
Okay.
$5,000.
It was a site improvement, it was a renovation on the inside. Well,
That's not a site improvement.
Okay.
Exterior site improvements.
That would clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it say that in the ordinance? Does it say exterior specifically?
It does not say exterior. We can certainly add that.
And also to that point, Councilman Fair, I think that partially the next point of the revision.
I might address that as
Is
well.
the tree fund, yeah, that would address.
Tenants.
Sorry.
Alright.
Cleans it up even more.
Any more questions on that item? All right, and the last one?
Yeah, so the last one, before the new tree and landscape ordinance, there was an opportunity for folks who were required to plant trees to pay into the tree fund. And so we are bringing that back. Some sites, right now, the minimum tree density requirement is 16 trees per acre. So if you are on a quarter of an acre lot, then you have to plant 4 trees. You have to have 4 qualifying trees on your lot, right? But if you don't have any trees, then you have to plant 4. This would allow you to only plant 1 and pay $750 per tree for the remaining 3 trees.
Into specifically for that.
Into the
purpose.
tree fund.
And the tree fund currently exists and has a balance.
It does, right?
The tree farms. I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
There's a small balance in there. I think we received like maybe $2,000 for 3 or 4 times, $300 or $500, about $2,000, $2,500.
I was just curious if like any permit fees also go into that fund, or if it's only for fines.
It shouldn't.
Okay, it's only for fines. Okay. And then, kind of related to this discussion, I have heard some additional things in regards to the implementation of the tree ordinance. And so I'm just curious, I mean, is it okay to talk about some of those now? I mean, it makes sense to me as well, but those haven't been through the planning commission. And some of them may be more based on interpretation, such as, do trees in the right of way count towards the calculation? They do?
Oh,
Or-
yeah, that's
or-
a
or
question.
you-
I was nodding.
I
Yeah.
Okay.
think
Like,
we
so that
want
is-
to-
that
I think
has
we
been
want
a
to rule
conversation.
on these changes tonight.
Yeah.
And can we leave this in committee to continue
You can,
discussion?
you can send
But
out
we
these.
do want to send these out
the.
tonight.
I don't want to delay these changes because I know they're affecting people, and so
Okay.
I think if the committee can both send this out, send the changes that have been proposed out, and then leave the item in committee to discuss whatever else you want to discuss. But I want to make sure we get this out so that we can solve this issue that keeps coming up.
Because what do we need to do? Send it out for a public hearing, right? Set a public hearing?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
also leave it
changes.
here.
Based on the changes.
Do we need a public hearing?
Well, it's gonna be part of the zoning.
Yeah.
Oh, you do,
If
okay.
you're going to amend the ordinance, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this came from the planning commission.
They did.
So I would send that part out without recommendation, pending a public hearing. We'll set the public hearing for that. And then
But
you
we
can
have-
also leave the item in committee to just continue to discuss whatever else about it you want.
Okay.
So given that, do I have a motion for these 3 items specifically?
Yes, I'll make a motion to send those 3 changes out without recommendation to council, and then keep this item on for
I have
further
a question.
discussion. Yes.
To make sure I'm correct, you have an ordinance, right? These are just changes you made.
Changes to
These are
the
revisions,
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
right.
because I have to draft an ordinance that has.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what happened tonight, and then we'll get you.
Okay.
All right, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Wolverton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes 4-0. Okay, Councilor Sims?
Well, were you just saying those other?
No, you,
the
I
rest
felt
of
like
the
you had some
conversation?
questions about
Well,
right-of-way trees.
I mean, I have some questions about in regards to implementation going forward, but I mean, if we're going to carry it over, we don't have to go through it all tonight. I mean, but it's just in regards to the calculation on properties and just make sure that we don't have any additional unintended consequences and that there's consistency in implementation, and trying to achieve that in all of these cleanups and additional
Yeah.
clarifications we're doing.
I mean, Scott's still here and Brammer here.
Yeah.
Oh, so we can certainly
Yeah.
try to address whatever questions
Okay.
you have.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think question number 1 then, if someone plants a tree, comes to us, has to plant a tree in the right of way, and they plant it, does that count towards their calculation or not?
For minimum tree density, no.
No. Okay. And I think that's just important to clarify. And then.
But, so most people don't come ask the city council for permission to plant a tree in the right of way.
But some people have.
But some people have, sure.
Yeah. I mean, and there's instances then too where, I mean, actually, I was just talking to Bram about one today where there's one in Ward 3 where there's a new development and there's trees possibly in the right of way. And if that is how they're meeting their calculation, then what do we need to do to rectify that? And who? It doesn't count. So then that becomes an enforcement side. So what does that look like? Does that happen on Wyatt's side because it's still an active construction site? Or they don't have the certificate of occupancy yet? A little bit.
Yeah. Well, what's the question, I guess?
The question is if we come across instances where, like that is an example. So we see something, we're like, oh no, that's going to be trouble down the road. It's better to let them know now than later. Like, who do we go to? Do we go to Scott? Do we go to Bram? Do we go to Wyatt?
Either of those three.
Do we go to you? And you're just saying
I
that because
copy
I didn't say
everybody
Kale.
that could
Yeah.
possibly be connected when I
Okay.
send emails,
Right.
so I copy the mayor and Alex and Mike and.
Just not me.
Okay.
Just not me.
The problem is that, and Bram knows this, that, like I said, for trees in the right of way, if a construction vehicle parks on top of the roots and then the tree dies in a year, then we end up having to take it down, and the homeowner doesn't, right?
Right.
So they don't get credit for their MTD for trees in the right of way.
So number one, we want them to put them on their property, not the right of way, because of the maintenance issues. And number two, they shouldn't be getting that as part of their calculation as well, so they need to be fully aware of that.
That's usually the case in the beginning, because they've got to submit a landscaping plan early on for their property. So we'll look at that, they should give us a survey, say, this is how many trees I've got, this is how many I'm gonna protect, or this is where I'm gonna plant some more, it's just their property. And so if they're counting one off of their property in the right of way, we say, no, that one doesn't count. That's early on, that's at the beginning.
So, as an example then, even going further into the weeds, say there's a site and it's on their plan that they're gonna protect it, but proper protections aren't in place during construction, then it can be anticipated that the life of that tree has been shortened. Then does that tree still count because they didn't follow proper protocols, or does it count until it has to come down?
In my opinion, that would fall back on Brown to see that it's protected correctly with his expertise to see if it was damaged enough where we need to give credit for it or not. That makes sense?
Yes. So in the moment though of a construction site or a redevelopment, then if a best management practice is not being followed, then contact Bram for inspection at that time, or contact everybody.
It could be anybody, but Brown's the responsible party to see that he can shut down the job site.
Okay.
Any of us probably can, but he's the one who's looking at it as far as the health of the tree goes.
Okay.
So he's trained in that.
Okay.
It's his expertise.
And I think some of the issue is kind of, Councilman Sim said, is defining that right of way, what can be done, what can't be done, is very vague right now. To be honest, initially when I started this, we were counting trees in the right of way. And at some point, I don't know if it was just due to lack of protection or realizing that, yeah, if we allowed them to plant there, it is down the road, potentially a city incurred, maintenance as well as removal. And as y'all are all aware, the cost of removing trees is going up. I think on a daily basis. And it's only going to be probably getting worse as the years go on. And it's something that needs to be addressed, whether it's managing it or just clearly defining to ensure that people aren't working in the right of way, potentially impacting trees that are the cities due to lack of protection or just improper planting. There are several that we've looked at in the past recently that were planted in the right of way on public utilities. That it will be an issue. Luckily, it's a slow-growing tree, but should it be removed, and who should be removing it? So, I think having that conversation of clarifying right of way and how the city is managing it needs to be addressed. Next couple weeks or whenever, best, I'm always available, so.
If you're gonna make changes, it needs to be before we publish it.
So
Well,
we weren't gonna add any of these things that we're talking about now to the 3 changes.
I think the plan is to publish those 3 things, keep this item here so we can continue the discussion and kind of work through specifics.
Do you feel like?
And part of the right of way could be resolved just in the reviews and inspection process as well.
Right, that's right.
Do you feel like you need any additional language in the ordinance, or like you said, it sounds like it's a enforcement issue?
Right.
And I believe there is some language in there that I do have some discretion as well as the DEZ office to make calls as they see fit, in these instances.
Yeah. I think it's an enforcement thing.
All right, anything else you want to do with this?
No,
Do you want me to leave this here for now?
Even though it may be, if it ends up all being enforcement, then that is administrative, but for the time being, I'd appreciate just the discussion because we do receive feedback from residents about it and just like to make sure before we move it on. Thanks.
Okay. All right, well then, without objection, I'll carry this item over.
So we're sending the 3 changes out to
We are
council, but
sending
we're
the 3
carrying it
changes,
over.
yep, yes, we are. But you can leave leave the item number in here as well.
Okay.
And without objection, we're adjourned.